Oh god, yeah.
Hello and welcome back to the Between Buckets podcast. My name is Patrick Cross, and joining me, as always, up in Sydney this time, we're not in person, it's Lucas Pearce.
I think I prefer it. The face-to-face thing, believe it or not, is good for humanity.
Were you just distracted by my attractiveness and in-person charm?
It's your eyes.
Yeah, those devilish eyes.
Yeah, I didn't understand how they could fit in something so docile.
I don't know what to make of that, so we're just going to slide right on. Today we're going to be talking about one of the more entertaining but weird topics, in my opinion, the Philadelphia 76ers. We're going to do a whole lot on them. To close it out, we're going to be looking at some of the trades coming up to the mid-season trade deadline that we would like to see happen, but also reside somewhere in the realm of plausibility. If, like Lucas and myself, you enjoy a side dish of written analysis to go with the main meal, which is this podcast, then you should head to betweenbuckets.com. On the site, you'll find feature articles looking at topics such as Giannis's MVP defense, a critical year for Ben Simmons, and our top 25 player rankings heading into the 2019-20 season. Be sure to check it out, as there are some contentious names challenging conventional wisdom and some familiar faces in declining places. Also, be sure to follow Between Buckets on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for more updates and analysis. Back to the pod. Alrighty, Lucas, coming up, well, just hitting about the halfway point of the season, one of the more interesting storylines, which has been interesting for the last couple of years, I suppose, is the Philadelphia 76ers and how they've looked so good at times, like on the Christmas Day game in particular, but also so terrible at times, and especially relevant to the start of the season expectations, where everyone, and ourselves included, expected Milwaukee and Philly to be the premier Eastern Conference teams. I think Milwaukee has certainly justified that label, but so far Philly sort of middle of the road. We know Milwaukee are at the top of the conference, and that's pretty much likely to stay. But then you've got this clump of teams there: Miami, Toronto, Boston, Philly, Indiana, and that's the order that they're standing in as of time of recording. And Philly hasn't really been able to distinguish themselves amongst that group. So I want to throw it to you. What have you made of Philadelphia's season so far? How would you evaluate them compared to the expectations heading into the season?
Well, I think based off expectations, they're disappointing. Because I had it down to two teams. Before this season started, I thought Milwaukee and I thought the Philadelphia 76ers, one of those two were making it out of the East. But at the moment, Milwaukee is miles ahead of everyone else. And once you fall to everyone else, Boston looks just as formidable at the moment, as does Toronto. Toronto gives me this just sneaky feeling that they're going to blow expectations out of the water. If anyone versing Toronto, I'd be afraid. But the problem with Philadelphia is I think the issues that have always been inherent with this roster and the front office's agenda, i.e. building around Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, it continues to corrode. And I think that was exacerbated by Jimmy Butler's tenure. I think it was then further exacerbated when he left because it shined a spotlight on what they were lacking, which we'll get into later. And I can't actually see how they fix it outside of retaining one of the two pieces. So I guess now Philadelphia is this really confusing paradox because they still possess so much talent. And if there was this talent barometer, they'd be up there with the rest of the league. You know, there's not many other teams that I think on purely talent can rival them. But in terms of actuality and what translates on the floor, I don't think it meets anywhere near their talent projection.
Yeah, I think they've been a real mixed bag at the moment. I think in some respects they have lived up to expectation in that they're going into the season where knew they'd be this stifling defense with their size and their length and their switchability, versatility. And I think so far that's looked pretty good. They're fourth in defensive rating. But other than that, they are struggling big time. Their offense is way down at 20th in the league, which is surprisingly low, even though we knew of their limitations, especially in shooting. Speaking of shooting, they're 24th in three-pointers attempted, 18th in percentage. At the moment, they're sort of stumbling. They look really good for a week, then they look terrible for a week. They win a fantastic game, they lose a horrible game. And they're one of the teams where I find them really sort of difficult to evaluate in a sense because they can be so inconsistent. And they'll look fantastic for a quarter and a half, and I think they'll be unbeatable and they could beat anyone in the league. But then they lose to these really average teams, and they're just so frustrating. But going into this trade deadline, do you think there's anything they can do and by way of a trade without stamping on later grounds topics? But also, do you think there's any coaching moves or switches that could be done to best utilize this roster, especially Simmons and Embiid?
I think it depends what the goal is. When we look at their personnel on and off the court, I think it all points to a shake-up in the off-season. Particularly because right now, I don't think... people need to remember as well that Joel Embiid is young. Ben Simmons is young. But contractually, and when you factor in health, they're in a win-now mode. This is a window in itself, irrespective of age. So you can't throw away a season. And I think, irrespective of how I feel about Brett Brown, which I'm sure again, get back to later on in this podcast, I think getting rid of him mid-season is a mistake. I don't think particularly if you're in the playoffs and you've shown potential, the way that they handled Milwaukee, the way that, as you said, they can show up on certain nights, it's all there. But I don't think there's any short-term shake-up this season. I think it happens after the finals.
Why do you think Brown is lacking?
I think it's minutes in how he allocates them. I think his rotation, when he will sub someone in, when he'll sub someone out, is difficult. I think the way that he has failed to get through to Ben Simmons, now that's not necessarily just his fault, because he has said to the media, which means he's serious about it, he has challenged Ben Simmons to shoot more than 1 3 a game. He's not doing that. So that is a player correlation as well. But Brown's, particularly in the playoffs last year, some of his choices, and it's not just his fault, I think the pieces he's working with are quite unique, and I think he's also suffering from Joel Embiid's absence. I think some of his rotations and the way that he allows Simmons, and I'm not picking on Simmons here, but it's more how Brett has chosen to use him is quite strange, in that you can watch any 10 possessions with the Philadelphia 76ers, and any possession that starts with Ben Simmons taking it up the floor and then looking for a handoff so that the possession can start again is quite strange, and I think it stagnates pretty much every offensive opportunity that they had at the beginning once he crosses halfway. Now that's obviously because of his shot, but it's also because if he's not in transition, his effectiveness dramatically decreases.
Yeah, I think Brown's use of Simmons is one of the more sort of interesting but also bellwether marks of him as a coach. I think Philadelphia, this is a difficult team to coach with this roster and this roster makeup, especially Ben Simmons. But also, you look at a lot of other teams around the league, with a more sort of dynamic and more of an offensive threat point guard, I think it's a little bit easier to run an offense. Look at a team like Houston or even Memphis now, where it's spread the ball, it's pick and rolls with the point guard up top, it's drive and take. Houston's the quintessential example of that, but that's just something that I don't think.
Why is Houston effective? And the reason they're effective, Patrick, is because they prioritize seconds on the shot clock. And when Ben Simmons wastes a few by literally having to look at someone else and hand off to them so that they can initiate their half-court offense, efficiency and the opportunities that you can indulge in as a team trying to score the ball are halved. And it just goes against modern basketball and the progression of modern basketball. If we've already abrogated the fact that most of these players aren't looking to shoot the ball from the 3 unless they're comfortable, be it off the dribble or they've got the space or that screen, how many more options do they have? And the numbers don't lie. Their rankings in 20th, as you said, in offensive rating, 20th in pace, doesn't make any sense, particularly when Ben Simmons is the one that we're meant to be funneling this whole thing through. He loves to play fast. He loves to play in transition. There's no one more terrifying in transition except maybe LeBron James. And yet...
Yeah, but that's the problem with this roster makeup, though. I don't think that's necessarily an indictment on Brown or Simmons either. I mean, Simmons doesn't have the pieces around him to be able to play the way we all wish he was, and that's faster, pushing it, running it up the floor himself. He gets down the court. I know Embiid's out lately, but when Embiid's on the floor, it's very much a slow it down, grind it out type offense, because they don't have these quick tools and shooting pieces around him to make it work. And I know that is also a flaw of Simmons in that he, theoretically, we all hope that he needs these pieces around him in order to maximize his talents. And that is one of his limitations. But I think going forward, it's going to be how Simmons' role evolves into something that I'd particularly like to see, which has definitely been, this is an original take. A lot of people think this is seeing Simmons used as more of a role man in the pick and roll as well. I understand him dribbling it up and his inability to initiate an offense due to his lack of a jump shot a lot of the time is a restriction. But outside of him shooting it and becoming a great shooter all of a sudden, which clearly isn't going to happen, it just needs to change. They just need to use him differently.
Exactly.
So I'd like to see him being used as like a role player, because he's obviously, we know how he's the size of a power forward. He's the athlete of a point guard, and he's a fantastic playmaker and finisher around the hoop, I think, and an offensive rebounder. So I think using him as a role man is something that would be perfect for this offense, especially with Embiid out. But I think going forward, maybe a reason why they're not doing that as much is because it goes back to this Simmons and Embiid pairing, which is sort of this fundamental and inherent clash.
Exactly, and I think my point about Brett Brown is, in a nutshell, he has not yet found a way to utilize Simmons that in a way that's ultimately positive and translates to this confidence for the postseason. And everyone knows the postseason slows down, and these issues are just going to continue to be exacerbated because there's 7 games. Teams get used. I think the league has already begun to figure Ben Simmons out. We saw in his second year, he played the same way as his rookie season, and it was not the same success. And in the postseason, when it becomes more stagnant, when it's more physical, I don't see Philly emerging as this triumphant, unstoppable force. I see them getting defeated by their own positional shortcomings and by a coach that hasn't figured out how to utilize the talent that he has. And it's not necessarily just his fault. There may not be any coaches that could successfully utilize what's going on at the moment.
Just in terms of the playoffs, I agree. I think the limitations that could definitely come back to hurt them, and the way they use Ben Simmons at the moment, especially often you see him just standing in the short corner on a lot of possessions, is going to hurt them. But I do think going into the playoffs with it slowing down, I think although offensively they struggle, I think defensively they're going to look even better, which is something that is sort of confounding about this team, where on half of me is really worried about their prospects going to the playoffs because of this lack of shooting spacing that we just mentioned. But also defensively, they're such a phenomenal team, and I think slowing it down and a bit more sort of physical, tougher play that's usually allowed in the playoffs really suits their defensive identity.
Yeah, and that's the paradox here, because these are two different halves of the floor. And that's also why I think when one asks, well, are they still contenders if you're citing all of these flaws? You still have to say yes, because as all coaches say, defense wins championships. And they still, it's that talent factor that we've talked about, and it's the fact that they still defensively are just this impressive force.
Alrighty, before we go into a bit more of an outlook into their playoff hopes and contention and viability, we're going to have a quick break.
This is a call out for watch enthusiasts everywhere. The Quick20 Network is growing, and we now have our very own watch hobbyist website. So head over and visit thenextwatch.com. That's THENXT watch.com. With a ton of reviews, features, and weekly columns on watches under 4 figures, thenextwatch.com has it all.
Alrighty, Lucas, by the sounds of it, I think we can both agree that we still, despite the limitations of this roster and their weaknesses and the challenges going forward, Philadelphia are just undeniably a contender due to the nature of the Eastern Conference, the talent that they have on their roster, as we mentioned. But going forward, what's the case against Philadelphia? Why don't they win the
first one's the obvious one. I think there are better teams, or more complete teams, more efficient teams, more cohesive teams even, Patrick. We look at...
In the Eastern Conference, or are you talking in total?
I mean, in totality, but also in the Eastern Conference. We can start there. As we've already said, I think... Do you reckon Milwaukee is the better team? Would they be the favourite in a 7-game series between these two teams?
Yeah, see, I've actually got a weird sort of perception on this, because
I have it too. I don't want to talk about it. makes me uncomfortable.
Because the thing is, we know Philadelphia and Milwaukee are the favourites and the prestige talent. But if I'm Philadelphia, I'm actually not as worried about Milwaukee. I'm more worried about some of the other teams in the Eastern Conference. I think it would be such...
Like
Toronto. I think it would be such a Philly thing to do, to lose to a team like Toronto or even Miami, or even... I don't think they'd be beaten by the Pacers, but I think a team like the Pacers could at least challenge them. I'm actually more worried about teams like that than I am against Milwaukee and Boston. So I think this Eastern Conference sort of potential matchups that we're going to get and the ultimate seeding is actually going to be really important.
Let's say that they finish today, right? Let's say that these are the standings and they're locked in. Philly would be playing who in the first round?
They'd be playing Boston in the first round at the moment. That being said, this is of today, and by tomorrow the standings could be very different because there's between 2nd and 6th, there's 2.5 games. But yes, if it ended today, it'd be a 4 plays 5. Philly versus Boston. Boston gets home court.
All right, well, let's do that first. Do we think Boston wins against Philly?
No, I don't. Not the series.
Okay.
But I think that's a pretty good matchup for Philly.
Yeah, I think it's a 7-gamer.
7?
I think because Boston's really good now, man. I was watching them today. They pummeled the Lakers.
Boston's another team that sort of confounds me again, that I think they can look so good when their wing pieces and Kemba are rolling and they're hitting their threes. But I think their record against Philadelphia so far this season, which I'm pretty sure is 0-3, or at least 0-2, I think that's indicative of a broader trend. I think they can't handle Philly's size. Obviously, this is dependent on Embiid's health as well. I think if Embiid's out, it's a different equation. But I think Boston... I don't think any team has an answer, a real answer for Joel Embiid, but I think Boston is the furthest from it.
Yeah, okay. All I'm saying is I think it would be closer than because I agreed with you. I said in the offseason that Giannis and Philly are going to roll through Boston because they just don't have the size, and Enes Kanter is not your defensive stopper.
No.
All right, so for argument's sake, they get through Boston. Who are they versing then? They're versing Milwaukee, theoretically.
I believe so, yes.
And who wins there? What would your call be?
I'd actually like Philadelphia in that.
See,
I like that matchup for them only because this feels disrespectful to Milwaukee because they've been such a dominant regular season team and all the advanced stuff points their way. But I think if any team has the tools to at least slow down Giannis, it is Philadelphia. With Embiid was fantastic in the Christmas Day game against Giannis defensively. But if you can also throw Horford and Simmons, not necessarily on Giannis directly, but as, complementary pieces, I think that would make life really difficult for Milwaukee.
Yeah, and I would agree. I think physically they're the best matchup for them. But I guess it comes down to, coaching and supporting cast. Like, what Philly has in terms of in the paint and all of that, I think Giannis has proven that he's more than capable of stepping up and dealing with it. He's got the same physicality. We've seen him manhandle Ben Simmons in the past. And at the end of the day, Giannis does not get injured. He does not get hurt, or at least he never has. And I think that second round physicality, are we conceding that it's probably a 6-7 gamer as well?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
at least.
We've got Embiid's health.
Oh, not at least. It can't go more than 7, but 6 or 7.
We've got Embiid's health factoring into that. I agree with you because I said it again. I thought Philly was making it out of the East, but they have not been the team that I thought they were going to be. And Milwaukee has taken another step up. We're currently working on our next top 25 article, and I'm looking at these stats for Giannis, and he's taken the next leap. And we can't say that.
He's getting better and better on a weekly basis.
And we can't say that about any 76er. Embiid he can't even play right now. And Simmons has been informed, but I don't think he's showcasing anything that he's previously not showcased before. It's more just things are clicking right now, and he doesn't have to deal with the obstacles in his skill set that are Joel Embiid and the space that he loses when he's on the court with him. So I think my gut and my brain just can't reconcile saying Philly because everything that I've seen, I think it like you've said, I think it is disrespectful to the Bucks almost. And they've got more size this year. They've still got better shooting, and I think they have a better system, just quietly, because their transition is better.
Oh, not quietly. They've got a much better system.
Yeah, I know, but I just didn't want to bash them too much.
Be a bit more gracious. Yeah.
So I think I would just say the Bucks, and I think
that's definitely a fair pick. I think I am kind of maybe it's a form of bias in the sense that I think Milwaukee's loss to Toronto at the playoffs last season was a really terrible loss because Giannis, although not completely neutralized, the wall system that Toronto built up against him just completely and utterly worked. And I think if anyone was to replicate that, it'd be Philly. But that being said, as we've said, Giannis has definitely improved as a shooter and all-round player, and he's got the tools to be able to attack something like that a little bit better.
And he's shooting
so
more...
it'd be really interesting whether Giannis has improved enough to take something like that down if Philadelphia's defense is actually up.
But I don't think it just rests on that.
Down.
I think we need to give credit to Milwaukee's defense. They are also an elite defensive team. They're also a much better shooting team. And there's going to be games where they lock them down, but also Giannis is just as capable. And you got the Lopez brothers, one of which, former All-Star, can score the ball, formidable defender, and then you got Rolo, who's just as physically intense and can probably hold his own in certain stretches against some of those 4s and 3s. And I think Middleton, he's going to be Middleton. He's going to have 2 or 3 good games and he's going to have 2 or 3 bad games. But let's say, for argument's sake, Patrick, I'm saying Bucks, but let's say that Philly gets through to that. It's the finals. And theoretically, they would be playing Miami or Toronto.
That's an interesting one for me with those two. I think it's pretty early in the season. Toronto have been so good and they've got some fantastic tools to throw at Embiid. And I really like Miami's identity. I think one thing that separates Philadelphia from those two in my eyes is this sense of a go-to guy, a clutch option, and a last second shot clock chance. And I think that's one of the bigger limitations of Philly at the moment. Is 2 minutes left in the game of a close game. Let's say it's this Eastern Conference Finals against Miami or Toronto. Miami and Toronto have Butler, and they now have Siakam as guys who can close games, and they can put the ball in their hands and they can make a play for themselves. And Philadelphia don't have that.
They also have these shooters in Hero, even Bam. Bam can cover that 12 feet range. I'd trust him finishing a play in the last 30 seconds. And in Toronto, they have proven bucket getters. Knowing Fred VanVleet, he's going to hit 8 threes in the last 5 seconds of the game.
Only if he pops out another kid.
Exactly, though. Which, it's plausible. But my point is, outside of VanVleet's procreation, they've also got Kyle Lowry, who has proven that he can get it as too. I mean, Game 6 was Lowry's game. Kawhi said it himself. Lowry came out and he finished that game. And I also trust Gasol. Gasol's had his clutch moments in the past, and he's got one leg that's not working and all of that. But if we're talking about this clutch element, these last few minutes of a game, Toronto and Miami are better situated for it. It's not even close.
It's true, and I think this isn't to say that Philadelphia don't necessarily have guys. It's not that I don't trust them. Like Philadelphia has some fantastic players, but it's just with their offense style that we've mentioned. If it's 2 minutes left and they need a bucket, who's getting it? Because at the moment, the contracts and the player personnel would suggest that Tobias Harris is the reason they've brought him in. It's to be this guy, obviously, and Butler's gone.
It's Embiid or
The thing
Tobias.
is, it should be Embiid, but my problem with Embiid is in the last minute or two of a game, he's an excellent free throw shooter, so it's not that as being a big man. It's that I think it's difficult for a big to make a play for himself with the time running out like that, because he's got 2 options. He can get it on the post or he can get a perimeter touch.
Oh, you're absolutely right.
He gets a post touch, he's getting double teamed straight away.
And it's a difficult play to pull off.
It's a difficult play to make, but also oftentimes in these last minute situations you need a 3, so that's not happening down low. Or you can give it to him on the perimeter where he's a 32% shooter, which is okay.
No, it's not.
At best.
It's not okay. It's not okay.
Yeah, I think I was trying to be generous. It's not good.
It's abominable.
And that being said, that's off catch and shoots. He's not pulling up for 3s or
and
ISO
this is also
one-on-one-ing.
a clutch environment, keep in mind. So everything is heightened.
Exactly. So, unfortunately, I don't think Embiid's really your answer there. Obviously, it's not Simmons because as good of a playmaker he is. We've said that. So no.
Don't even disguise it with a compliment. What are you doing? He can't shoot. He is useless in
He
this
can't
possession.
shoot.
He is the one throwing the ball in. The point guard is the one inbounding in a last 6-second play.
Yes. Yes,
It's
it
a
is.
yes.
But
Don't even hesitate.
it's a yes. That being said, but the inbounder in the last minute play can actually be one of the more dangerous positions on the court. But yes, Simmons is not suited for that environment, and he's not getting a bucket. So then what do you look at? You look at Horford, same problems as Embiid.
Although a much better
in the
shooter.
post, but a much better shooter, but he's not creating it for himself.
No,
he's not running off the screen to get it.
He needs to be a catch and shoot type gig.
So then you're looking at Richardson and Harris, who are both
respectable. They're
good
respectable.
at that. They're respectable. They can make their own play, but Game 7 Eastern Conference Finals, a minute left. I'm not trusting either of them to make the play.
Unproven.
We know how Tobias Harris's inconsistency really annoys me, and this whole conversation has mainly been about Simmons and Embiid, but Harris is the guy who's making $32 million, and at the moment, 1 week he looks amazing. Like, look at this last week. Against Brooklyn, he had 34 and 10, 70% shooting, 4 or 7 from 3, fantastic. Then today against Brooklyn, he had 15 and 6, didn't score in the last quarter and a half, shot 5 of 17. So with him, he has his good nights, he has his bad nights. I'm not trusting him. And I think this is a real limitation of Philadelphia. So I think...
Where did Harris go in the playoffs as well? Like, honestly, last season, if we think about it, he disappeared for most of it. I think
he did, and that's difficult because he obviously had Butler in there as well, and he's got a much bigger role this year.
That's the point, Patrick. Butler thrived. Butler was looking for it. Butler made those last plays down the stretch for Philadelphia when they took Toronto to the brink of Game 7. Like, that point works against Harris because you've got these dudes, and that's even the Eastern Conference. So let's say, sounds strange saying this, but let's say that they make it through that and they're in the finals now. Yay for Philadelphia, free cheesesteaks. Who are they playing really? There's probably in the West. I'd love to hear your thought. It's a little bit of a tangent, but who are the 3 or 4 favorite West teams?
Well, to me at the moment it's Lakers or Clippers. Sorry,
I agree.
Sorry for the unoriginality between Buckets fans, but right now I don't really see any team any other team
outside of OKC.
Getting out. And no. Outside of my Spurs boys coming up out of the clutch, DeRozan will take us.
I can low-key just see Chris Paul taking this one. He's bringing OKC a championship.
Okay, settle down. This tangent's getting a little out of hand. But to get back to your point, I think it's Lakers or Clippers, and I'd probably prefer Clippers is a bigger chance.
Yeah, I think...
And the point is that if we're going continue with this tangent, say it's Philly and the Clippers... Who are you trusting in the last 2 minutes, Tobias Harris or Kawhi Leonard?
Let's move on because I don't even want to put those two in the same conversation. And
I think that says it all, doesn't it? So
you've also got LA, and it's the same thing again. It's
the same problem.
And then you've got your newcomers, Denver, Utah, but they're all just superior teams, I think, and and it's not because of talent, and that's what frustrates me. Because on paper, I think the talent of Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, 2 potentially generational players against Los Angeles Lakers, again, 2 generational players. LA Clippers, the same. Denver, the Joker's fantastic and they have a fantastic supporting cast and the talent's all there. I think they're all on generally equal ground. There might be a little bit of a discrepancy between a few of the teams, but my point is each of those aforementioned teams have systems that they've bought into and work. And have rewarded them with more impressive wins in a harder conference. And if we go back to Milwaukee, and that's the catalyst for my decision, really, it's these systems that they're applying talent and they're utilizing them to get the most out of them. And in Philadelphia, that is just not happening.
Alrighty, to sum it up, if Philly make it out of the East, how surprised are you?
Pretty surprised now. And it's just because I don't think it's happening. I think a lot would need to change, and I can't see it happening. I wouldn't be shocked, but I would be very surprised.
I think I'm in a pretty similar boat, but I think I'd be a little less surprised. Yeah. I'd be pleasantly surprised.
The Ben Simmons apologist has to be a notch above the rest of us.
Yeah, he hasn't left me yet. I'm still on that wagon, and I will always be on that wagon. So wouldn't surprise me if he gets MVP.
Oh god, go to fun fact guy, Patrick.
Yeah.
Go to fun fact.
All right, fun fact guy, take it away.
Today's fun fact centers on 2-time MVP Steve Nash and his historic, if not legendary, free throw shooting. So good was Nash from behind the charity stripe that his worst ever free throw shooting percentage in a season was still a highly respectable 82.3%. To put that in perspective, Lakers do-it-all forward LeBron James has never in any one of his extraordinary seasons shot more than 78% from the line. Born in Canada, Nash has an incredible 9 seasons wherein his free throw percentage was over 90%. That is one more than shooting legend and Hall of Famer Reggie Miller. He's also the only person to have 4 different seasons shooting over 50% from the field, 40% from the 3, and 90% at the free throw line. In fact, over his entire career, Nash only missed a total of 324 free throws. Lakers center and 8-time All-Star Dwight Howard, during his only season alongside Nash back in 2012, missed a whopping 366. Nash may not have the speed and strength of James or Howard, but it goes to show there are many ways to score the ball, excel, and affect the game. Back to you, boys.
Thank you, fun fact guy. Alrighty, Lucas, to finish it off today, with the mid-season trade deadline approaching faster and faster, I'm going to throw to you and we're going to talk about some hypothetical but still plausible trades that we'd like to see happen. So these aren't necessarily predictions. They will, well, at least on my end, be involving players that are currently involved in trade discussions. So we're not predicting that they're going to happen, but the ones that we'd like to see happen and that remain plausible. So with that established, Lucas, what have you got?
I think anyone that closely follows our podcasts, our articles, or just knows me, or has seen me in public, the chances are I'm wearing a Derrick Rose jersey.
This is the troves of thousands of fans.
I've followed this guy's entire career, and I want this to happen, and it brought me great joy when it was not just me saying it, because social media, Bleacher Report, ESPN, YouTube, everyone's now talking about the trade, the Derrick Rose trade that could happen before Feb 6. And the thing that excites me the most, Patrick, is we're talking about contenders. The contenders are looking for him, and from multiple sources, it's been said that teams are inquiring about Derrick Rose. And as a Chicago Bulls fan, as a Derrick Rose fan, that's enough almost. The fact that this guy's having a remarkable season, he's getting the recognition that he deserves, and he's made this comeback after this awful, awful slug. It's beautiful. So that's where I'm starting. I would love to see him end up on...
Is anyone surprised that you're starting with Derrick Rose?
No.
Just
no,
quietly.
because even if he retired, I would have opened this segment the same way, statistically. But...
I think it has been a couple of pods before we've talked about him, since we've talked about him, so it was overdue.
I know, and I think the beauty in this one is it's quite possible, and that in itself is a bit of a tragedy, because he's on, for the stats that he's putting up, he's on very generous money for 7.3 million this season, 7.7 next season. That's below mid-level talk almost, and It's very easy to move.
That's
it's very
healthy
easy to
money.
move.
That's nothing, essentially.
I'd love to see him on the Lakers.
What do you got?
And as a Bulls fan, as a NBA fan, it pains me to say that, because I respect the Lakers. I do not enjoy their basketball. And that's not just this current iteration. It's pretty much every single iteration, except for the Jerry West days, because, that's poetry in motion. But the way I see it is the Lakers could offer Kuzma and Cook, or maybe if Detroit was, wearing sunglasses and couldn't actually see the text messages in front of them, Kuzma and Cousins for Derrick Rose, and maybe a pick's chucked in there. But honestly, I don't think so, because the Lakers don't have any, and I don't think Detroit would be interested in parting any, particularly because they're looking to rebuild. And I see D-Rose slotting in there at number 6 and igniting a second unit that has not really, outside of Kyle Kuzma's occasional good game, had any real flair to it this season. And it's almost what they need. They need that person they can lean on to get them some points while LeBron and AD go to the bench.
In terms of the DeMarcus Cousins things, that's just to make the salaries work, because obviously he's not playing this year and his contract expires. So in effect, it'd be a swap Kuzma for Rose.
Oh, it'd be Kuzma and Cook. The money doesn't work unless it's
Cook's not the the bait for this that
Is Kuzma.
hypothetically Detroit would take is Kuzma.
Yeah.
Because
he's Michigan born. He was born in Michigan, which, plays a role in it. He's also, I think, slightly overrated by most people, but he can generate offense, and he's something. And I think that's the point.
He's something, and he's a young piece. Obviously, Detroit are not anywhere near relevancy and contention, so I think they may as well cash in on someone like Derrick Rose, whose value's gone up, and who is
value.
Undeniably is tremendous value, but is also undeniably a risky asset with his health history. So I think it would make sense for them to cash in and try and get Kuzma, who's at least a name and a face and a brand, to bring in town. But what do you see? Why should the Lakers go for someone like Derrick Rose and have to give up someone like Kuzma instead of looking at someone maybe like Iguodala or other sort of buy-in plays that they wouldn't have to trade Kuzma for?
Oh, look, Iguodala would be great defensively, but I think what the Lakers are already displaying is above what was expected. I think defense is not necessarily their problem. And more to your point, it's more about what Derrick Rose does for them as a table setter. Like, this is a guy that can, as I said, ignite the second unit, but also he's a guy almost pretty much over anyone in these discussions. Iggy's had his big plays as well, so not to take anything away from him, particularly last year. His three against Toronto in game 3 or 4 was miraculous. But Derrick Rose is a bucket getter in the last 30 seconds. It's statistically proven, and I can rattle off 10 clutch finishes to a game, and that's without thinking about it. From the beginning of his career, he has proven that he can finish with the best of them, and he's also a really underrated facilitator. I think he's averaging about 6 assists off the bench right now, and again, it just goes back to just harvesting as many points and players as possible. And it's not like you're losing a defender in Kuzma. I would argue that Derek is, he's obviously not an ace defender. He's not the quintessential point guard defender, but he's no worse than Kyle Kuzma.
Yeah.
Are you serious? Have you watched Kuzma put his hands up?
At least he can put his hands up and he's 6'9". That's something.
You would think so, Patrick.
Derrick Rose is not a phenomenal defender at this point in his career.
The other thing is, think about the combinations. You've got Dwight Howard, even Anthony Davis, the pick and roll there, Danny Green, LeBron. Derek just defensively takes them to new heights, and he just gets them more points.
So then the crunch time, as we were mentioning before, the last 2-minute lineup, what does that look like? So would you have D Rose, Danny Green, LeBron, Davis? And
I feel like it's almost Howard and JaVale, whoever's had the better game.
Do you think the bigs are playing crunch time minutes there?
I don't
JaVale
think so,
and
but
Howard?
who else is in?
You'd probably be looking at
like KCP
or Avery Bradley.
Yeah,
if
Bradley.
Unless they can go get Iggy as well, but unlikely if they.
It's probably Bradley, to be honest, because Bradley is defensively what you would want in a last 30-second type situation, and he has history of being able to shoot the ball, even though that's always been inconsistent. But I guess that's your lineup. But really, if it's a last possession play, there's a 60 to 70% chance LeBron has the ball in his hands. Then there's a 25 to 30% chance that there's Davis. And D Rose is just that last bit, I'd almost argue.
But exactly, but doesn't that negate the sort of necessity for Derrick Rose? I mean, I agree Derrick Rose will look fantastic off the bench, but I think everything the Lakers do should be built with the design of this concept, the last 2 minutes of a game. And at the moment, if you've got LeBron and Davis, who, as you said, are probably getting 80, 90% of the touches in this context, do you really want to bring in a 31% three-point shooter?
Yeah, but what is he in his last possession?
True, I don't have those numbers in front of me.
From memory, I looked at this stat once. It's probably changed in terms of exact percentage, but there was a time 2 seasons ago when under 24 seconds remaining, Derrick Rose finished 75% of his shots.
Look, but is he getting those shots with LeBron and Davis?
I mean, potentially, it depends on if this is a finals game. I presume that's what we're talking about here. If this is a finals game.
Yeah, finals, conference finals, whatever.
Where is the defense? The defense is flocking to LeBron James and Anthony Davis, which means the spacing and also just the capacity for Derrick Rose, who has clutch plays in both isolation, catch and shoot, and also just quick second dashes like his iconic one against Cleveland. And Game 3 of that second round, Chicago versus the Cavs back in 2014, 2015. That in itself is... Sorry, 2015, 2016, I believe. Now I'm going to get confused, Patrick. But that in itself...
Too many numbers.
I know, that in itself, I think is what they're looking for. It's you want... I mean, 3 people that are proven clutch finishers is pretty amazing.
It's a pretty handy option, and I was just being little devil's advocate in there, to be honest. I think it'd be a good trade for the Lakers, and it makes sense for Detroit.
To nail that point, and then we'll move on, like, with Derrick Rose, we're talking points. He generates more points than Kuzma. And he also probably gets more points further outside of, an elite shooter like Green and Dwight Howard, who can still rim run, and Anthony Davis, who's amazing. Like, these are more passes for AD. Derrick Rose's MVP was one off, in part, what he could do with his big man around him in Joakim Noah. So he can pass the ball.
He'd be lethal off the bench with the Dwight on
Exactly, and imagine the tempo changes. Imagine the exhaustion for the other team. They've just combat LeBron and AD, and it would almost be... It's not the same as Lou Williams because he plays differently, but it is almost that same effect. You have a second force to contend with. And I think that's formidable and highly sought after.
Alrighty, before we get sidelined in an hour-long D-Rose conversation, let's get sidelined in an hour-long DeMar DeRozan conversation. Because I couldn't do a hypothetical trade without getting my man DeMar DeRozan off my franchise.
This makes no sense.
So I've got a hypothetical trade for you.
Here we go.
And I'm gonna make the case that it does make sense.
I'm excited.
It's Miami and the Spurs.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd be getting rid of DeRozan, aka Miami would be acquiring DeRozan. And the Spurs in return would be getting Dragic, which is a $19 million expiring contract. So, salary filler essentially. Then I've thrown in Justice Winslow into the rotation, into the Spurs deal, who's kind of fell out of the Miami Heat rotation as well, which is largely in part due to injury as well. And I've thrown in Duncan Robinson. So I've got Dragic, Winslow, and Robinson for DeRozan. And now let me make the case.
Does that work for their
both
rosters,
teams.
though? 3 players for 1? Does that work?
I think Miami have to pick up a couple of extra players. But
So basically, they chuck in 1 or 2, like...
Look, I put it in on the ESPN Trade Machine and it worked.
Well, that's all we need to know.
That's good enough for me.
That's all we need to know.
That's good enough for me. I'll make the case for both sides. Let's start with the easy run, the Spurs. We don't have to pay or play DeRozan. Pretty good, isn't it? That's about all I had written down there. And then
Oh, goodness.
and I threw in that we expiring contract in Dragic is nice, and we take a flyer on a young Winslow who's kind of fallen out a bit.
Don't even get me started. Don't dress it like that either. This is a chance for you to rebuild almost. Like, there's no...
Yeah.
None of these players...
Yeah, but Winslow's not what he was 2 years ago.
Yeah, but he's
not the prospect and asset that he was then.
But he's...
All right, hear me out. Give me a sec, and then you can have a rip. All right. Now, Miami. Let's make the case there. All right. Miami are a very good team at the moment, and I completely understand the case of why would you mess with a good thing? Don't fix it if it ain't broke.
That's not the case.
I get that. Miami are not a championship team right now.
I disagree.
And they're not one with DeRozan, in my opinion. But I could see themselves... But I could see Miami talking themselves into something like this.
What do you mean?
I could see them talking themselves into this. It doesn't hurt them in the long term.
Pat Riley is looking at DeRozan and going, no.
There's rumors about this trade. This wasn't completely out of the blue. There's rumors that Miami are potentially interested in Aldridge or DeRozan.
It's not happening. I will buy a DeRozan jersey alongside my Carmelo Anthony jersey if this happens.
Which you should already start saving up for.
They're not re-signing him.
Miami... No, that wasn't the deal.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying that was half the deal.
No, the deal was if Carmelo Anthony, I'll remind the Between Buckets fans right here, if Carmelo Anthony is on the Portland Trailblazers roster at the end of the season, and I think the specific words, if he wasn't waived, cut.
Yeah, I think I did use waived.
Yes, so I think that jersey should start getting engraved. But back to DeRozan, he's increased his value slightly in the last 10 games. He's actually played quite well after a bit. 27, 6, and 6 on 60% shooting.
He hasn't shot a 3.
Yes, he has.
Mate.
He's shooting 0.8 a game in the last 10. That's pretty good for him. It's 0.8 more than Ben Simmons as well. The point is, I could see Miami talking themselves into this because they're a win-now team, and DeRozan doesn't hurt them long term because he comes off the books the year Giannis comes into value, which the year Giannis becomes a free agent, which is what they're lining up for as reported. So they'd be still able to get him. They're not giving up that much, really. They're not giving up much, and they get another name and a player in at the moment. Who can help?
Can I come in yet?
All right, tear me to shreds. All right, what do you got?
Okay, 1. I don't know the reports you're talking about, but they're not anywhere near the radar of anyone that's actually going to get traded. 2, where does the usage go, Patrick? Whose usage are we taking away on Miami Heat? A system that has Jimmy Butler scoring less points but with more efficiency, who's an entire system that, occasionally leans on Butler, Bam, isolate these players, but in general just runs as this well-oiled, geniusly put-together machine, who is, I think, a contender. I don't think they're the favourite, but I think that the way that the Eastern Conference goes, they're on the same echelon as Philadelphia. And where does the usage go? That's my first question. Because you're not taking anything away from Butler, because he generates a lot of...
Butler doesn't have an incredibly high usage at the moment,
exactly.
At least. He turns it up in the fourth quarter, but for the first 3 quarters, he barely shoots.
Yes, but where is it? Because the point is DeRozan generates these numbers because he gets to just have at it with the Spurs offense. He gets to play increasingly inefficient basketball.
Yeah, but I'm not saying DeRozan's going to go and average 27, 6, and 6 of them, or Miami need him to either.
Because
it doesn't. I'm not concerned about what he's going to average.
No, but that's Miami are. Miami need to think about what he's bringing to the team. Like, what is he giving?
He's
them?
bringing it.
No defense. No defense.
Well, the thing is that they've got. I think they've got complementary tools to counteract some of his deficiencies because they've got plenty of shooting.
Yeah,
they're a very good defensive
they don't
team.
Need to. This is I know you want off him, and I can understand the desperation to get rid of him. Believe me, my next person I wanted to trade was the Gar-Pax administration for Chicago, and I was going to trade them for a bag of chips. But my point is...
I love chips too much for that, just quietly.
The salt. The point is, there is no spot because they are playing progressive, fast-paced basketball. There is no conceivable way that both Pat Riley and Spoelstra, who is a top 5 coach in the NBA, buy into thinking that DeRozan elevates this squad.
But what are they giving up for him? Nothing,
that's irrelevant.
Really.
It's more the...
Judge is expiring and he's playing well off the bench. Winslow, they're barely even playing, and Robinson's one shooter on a small contract.
Yeah, I know, but I would rather all 3 of them than DeRozan because they actually do not compromise the identity of this team. Dribbling in mid-range is not basketball anymore. And the reason why you want him off the team is because he is not a suitable substitution for Kawhi Leonard. He is not someone of the future. He is someone that you guys are probably going to max out, Patrick.
Don't say that. Don't say that. I've clinged to this fantasy of getting him off my team. Don't bring me back down to reality.
DeRozan doesn't shoot threes. Spoelstra has designed an incredible offense where they kick it around, they find the best shot, and if he can't shoot half of the best shots that the team is prone to taking, which is inherent in their identity, he can't be on the team. There's also usage, and the reason why he is still somewhat credible as this points generator is because he gets to play with all-star usage. Take that away from him, he does not put up those numbers. His inefficiency plummets.
Well, I'm not... That's the thing. I don't think... I'm not envisaging him to come to Miami and be the top scorer and average 27. He doesn't need to.
He couldn't be in the top 3. And just for DeRozan, it makes no sense because it wouldn't sit well with him because his whole life he has been number 1. Think about it. In Toronto, he was the number 1 dude. He was the All-NBA selectee. In the Spurs, he is also the number 1 guy. And it just makes no sense because the Heat aren't interested in that. The Heat are on a new chapter in their life.
The Heat are reportedly interested in that, for the record.
By who? Who's reporting that?
Sports Illustrated reported that today.
Strange, but okay.
Heat Nation?
I'm not interested in Heat Nation.
It's Bleacher Report.
But who's it coming from? Like, unless it's like one of 3 or 4 people, I'm not believing it. And I just like take the jerseys off and the teams, and just put the players that you know, and take all bias out of it. If you're a Miami,
Oh hell no! Am I doing this for Miami? Hell no! There's no chance of doing it.
That's my point.
You should be moronic.
There's no.
I was making the case for it because this
irks you.
segment is trades that we want to see happen. And that's about it. It's in the realm of plausibility, and I desperately want to see it happen.
It's in the realm.
Do I think it happens? No. Do I think it should happen? If as a Spurs fan, hell yes. As a Miami fan, hell no.
Despite the fact that
I'm desperate, Lucas. I'm desperate.
I know. Despite the fact that this means
help me. Help me.
Plausibility and not impossible mean the same thing, but it sounds weird saying plausible. It's not impossible, but I can't say it's plausible.
When coming up potential trades, when I saw it was a rumor and there was a chance to even hypothetically get DeRozan off my team, I felt pretty happy.
Did it feel good doing it on the trade machine when the green trade successful bar lit up?
When that little tick came up and Miami didn't have to get rid of obviously Butler or Bam or Hero or anyone important, I was like, oof.
Yeah,
yes, please.
It's not happening at all. Pat Riley.
We're doing an emergency pod if this happens, and I'm just gonna scream yes for an hour and a half.
Yeah, and I will say nothing. I will just.
Will you get a DeRozan Heat jersey? Can I add this on the list?
I would get it if it happens. I'll get a DeRozan Heat jersey.
Wow. Okay. We had other trades, but
it's
Lucas. I'm thinking we just skip them because DeRozan just took up a lot of time.
I think it's important to say that this trade period I think will be interesting because I don't know if there's that many players that elevate contenders. It's more about the middle of the road teams.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. I think there's a lot of teams that are potentially one piece away from making a championship run. But that being said, there's not a lot of players out there that fill that void. So maybe something wild and surprising happens. Maybe, a good player gets to a championship team, gets them over the hump. But it's not looking like that's going to happen, really.
I think, to sum it up, I think D Rose is literally like.
It's one of the better chances.
He might be the only piece that a contenders are genuinely entertaining outside of Iggy. And I don't even know. I think Houston maybe vies for Iggy in the end. But Memphis seems quite confident.
And Covington's in the mix as well. Obviously, he's not a star player, but he can make a difference.
But Covington's salary is also higher than Iggy's and Derrick Rose's. Actually, no, Iggy's is still quite high.
Iggy's is like 17 mil, I think. I think Covington's about 11.
Yeah. So... No, I think even like the money as well. That's the most important part, and I think that is why contenders are looking at D Rose because it is such a friendly deal.
What if I were to offer you D Rose but worse on 4 times the money in DeMar DeRozan?
Wait, what? I don't understand the question. How is he?
Please take it.
How is he worse?
Is he a better player than Derrick Rose at the moment?
No way.
That's my point.
So why would I trade Derrick Rose?
Please,
why would
Why
would I trade him anyway? Like, in what world am I trading him? Even if he's in the Cleveland days and he's got a bone spur in his foot.
You would never trade him.
No,
you'd trade the Garpax for a bag of chips. You wouldn't trade.
No, I'd trade Garpax.
You wouldn't trade Derrick Rose.
The remnant salt of the packet of chips.
Oh, the best part of the chips.
There it is.
Anyway, I'm going to go and eat a packet of chips.
Sounds brilliant, my friend.
Lucas, it's been a pleasure.
As always.
Farewell.